This button-up is too boring.
Boring!
Instead of this, I want to make a colorful, fun, whimsical, and girly button-up shirt. So, here's the plan for this button-up. I'm using a free sewing pattern by Sewciety. This pattern is meant to be a dress shirt, but I will chop the length in half to turn it into a shorter button-up shirt, so I can wear it with pants, skirts, or dresses. This way, it will be much more versatile and wearable. The sleeves are short sleeves, but I want them to be kind of like a bell sleeve, so that means I have to add a few inches to the hem of the skirt. The hem of the skirt. To add a few inches to the hem of the sleeves to lengthen it. It also includes chest pockets, but I will not include them because it would look too much like a pajama. And then for the fabric, I want it to be girly, so for sure it's going to be a pink fabric. Once I'm done sewing the button up, it will be time for the fun details, which is adding a scalloped hem all around, and lastly, painting something like a blossom tree at the front and the back of the shirt by using some fabric paint and stencils. It was time to go fabric shopping. I was on a mission to find a plain pink fabric, but I kept finding these striped ones. Then about 5 seconds later, I find an entire section of plain pink fabrics, and this one came home with me. Now moving on to the pattern, unfortunately this pattern does not come with a projector file or an A0 file, which meant I had to print, cut, and tape 32 pages. It also doesn't have a layering option, so every single size gets printed too. For that reason, I measured my bust and it came out to 33 inches, which meant I would be making the size small. So I grabbed my pink pen and traced around my size. Now this is either really stupid or really smart. Just hear me out, okay? I used baking paper instead of tracing paper because I didn't have any tracing paper. I cut a piece slightly bigger than the pattern, laid it on top, and since it's see-through, I could easily trace over the pink line. I repeated that for all of the pattern pieces, and honestly, I think this is genius. If I ever want to make this pattern again in a different size, I can just trace a new size instead of printing, cutting, and taping another 32 pages. It feels slightly illegal, but I'm pretty sure it's not, right? This is the front bodice piece, and if I just put it up against my body, it almost goes below my knees, so it's way too long and definitely needs to be chopped off by a few inches. So these are my new pattern pieces after doing the modifications. This is the front piece, this is the back piece, the sleeves, the collar, and the collar stand. Guess what? I've bought the wrong fabric. So, the recommended fabric for this pattern was a rayon challis, a lightweight fabric that drapes around, but what did I do? I got a structured fabric, which is completely the opposite. We're not gonna cut through this. I'm gonna behave like a grown-up or a professional seamstress and make a mock-up first with this polyester bedsheet. Because the fabric was so stiff, I gave it a wash with some fabric softener to hopefully make it a little softer and more lightweight, and surprisingly, it actually worked. After that, I could finally start working on the mock-up. Ta-da! Here's the button-up shirt with the sleeves on. Nice. It's nice. It's very boring now, but we're gonna make it fun. This is just the mock-up. I think the fit is nice. The sleeves are nice. And I think we're ready to cut through the pink fabric. Are you ready? I'm ready. Okay, let's check the checklist. Check the checklist? I don't know. Anyways, front, cut 2 mirrored. Done. Back, cut 1 unfold. Done. Sleeves, cut 2 mirrored. Done. Collar stand, cut 2 unfold. Done. Collar, cut 2 unfold. Done. Pockets. We actually don't need pockets, so we're ready to go. Actually, I was lucky because my fabric doesn't have a right or wrong side, so instead of cutting the pattern pieces cut to mirrored, that it says cut to mirrored, I didn't need it to make it mirrored because my fabric didn't have a right or wrong side. But if yours does, be careful with cutting out your fabric. Ah, this project actually scares me so much. Like, I've never done a scalloped detail at the hem of anything. I've never done a scalloped edge before, and it's just, what if it goes wrong and then everything is messed up? You just gotta do it. Just do it. You know what? Staring at it doesn't do anything. I should just get started. Get started. It was finally time to start sewing. The first step was making the button placket. I folded 1/2 inch from the edge of the front piece and pressed it, then folded another inch, pressed it again, and stitched right along that folded edge. I repeated the same thing on the other front piece as well. You're supposed to interface the button placket, but my fabric already had enough structure, so I skipped that step. After that, I attached both front pieces to the back piece at the shoulder seams and the side seams. By this point, it was getting pretty late, so I called it a day and came back to it the next morning. So, it is the next day, and yes, I'm wearing the same outfit, but so far, we got the shoulder seams done, we got the side seams done. I am having a problem at the shoulder seams. I don't know why the front pieces are longer than the back pieces, but we're gonna fix that and then attach the collar. Next up was the collar. I placed the 2 collar pieces right sides together, stitched around the edges, and left the bottom open. Then I trimmed the seam allowance to help reduce bulk before turning it right side out. Once it was turned right side out, I used a sharp tool to gently poke out the corners so they would be nice and pointy. Then gave the whole thing a good press with the iron. Now onto the collar stand, I marked 1/2 inch at the bottom, folded the edge up by 1/2 inch and pressed it. You only need to do this for one of the collar stand pieces. Then I matched the center notches on the collar and the collar stand, stitched them together, trimmed the seam allowance once again, and turned everything right side out. After that, I clipped the collar onto the neckline, making sure all my notches were lined up, and stitched that in place too. Then it was time to stitch in the ditch, which I completely did a caca job at. But hey, not everything has to be perfect, right? And just like that, the collar was attached. Was that even a good explanation? Probably not. Thankfully, there's a detailed video tutorial for this pattern, and honestly, that's the only reason I managed to finish this project. So if you're planning on making this pattern too, I definitely recommend following along with her. After the collar, it was time for the sleeves, which I completely finished off camera. Oopsies! I look so stupid doing this, but I felt like the shirt was a little too long on me, so I stood in front of the mirror and completely eyeballed my new hemline, marking where I thought looked the best, which ended up being just below my butt. Is this the proper way to do it? Absolutely not. Does it work for me? Yes. And just like that, my new hemline was done. Then my order finally arrived, so let's do a quick sewing haul. I was only supposed to buy fabric paint and a few stencils, but I got a little carried away. First up is some fabric paint. This is actually my first time buying fabric paint, so I have no idea if this brand is any good or not. We're gonna find out. Next, some bias tape, then a pack of paintbrushes, some markers for tracing my patterns, fabric glue, and then the stencils. I may have gotten a little too excited because I definitely bought more than I needed. Then there is whatever this thing called. It's for putting paint in, so that's all I need to know. I also bought these sponges because I was convinced I was gonna use them, but I didn't even touch them once. More stencils, and even more stencils. I think I might have a stencils problem. And last but not least, this giant roll of tracing paper, which means I can finally stop stealing my mom's baking paper every time I need to trace a pattern. It was finally time to paint. Except there was one tiny problem. I had absolutely no idea how this fabric paint worked, so before risking the actual shirt, I grabbed some fabric scrap to see if this paint was actually permanent. I started by taping the stencil down so it wouldn't move around. Then, instead of painting straight away, I traced the design with a heat erasable pen first. I know I could have painted directly over the stencil, but this just felt a lot safer. It gives you way more control over the design, and if you're anything like me and can't freehand a flower to save your life, this method is a lifesaver. I mean, look at this. The stencil basically tells you exactly where to paint. The only problem was I had absolutely no idea what colors I wanted to use. So I did what any normal person would do and spend way too long looking at cherry blossom paintings online until I found something I liked. And this was my first attempt. Let's be honest, it looks like a 5-year-old painted it. But hey, trust the process. This was only a test to see if the paint actually worked. I also wanted to check if the heat erasable pen would disappear underneath the paint, and ta-da! It actually worked! With the test out of the way, it was finally time to paint the real shirt. Eventually, I settled on this design for the front, then flipped the stencil over to make the other side symmetrical. And of course, I couldn't leave the back plain, so I used the biggest stencil for there. Removing the stencils might have been my favorite part. It's so satisfying seeing the entire sketch appear perfectly underneath. And this is exactly why I love this method. The stencil gives you the outline, but you can still make little changes to the design. For example, I wanted the tree to be a bit longer, so I placed the stencil slightly above the hemline and extended it myself afterwards. And just like that, the sketch was finally finished. Get ready to witness some absolute chaos. This was the moment I was about to give up on this project. I was trying to mix the perfect shade of pink by combining some white and red paint, which sounds simple, right? The problem was the red paint refused to come out of the tube. So naturally, I squeezed the tube harder, which was a big mistake. The paint literally flew itself out of the tube. I mean, look at it. The paint was literally flying in the sky, and out of all of the places it could have landed, it chose the shirt. Just look at my wall. It genuinely looks like a crime scene. There was red paint everywhere. At the wall, at the shirt, at the carpet, on my hand, everywhere. This was just a nightmare. And guess what? Cleaning it was even worse. I had to climb up a ladder to clean up the wall, and that's how bad this was. Everything got twisted yesterday, and now I have a button up with stains on it at the front, at the back, at the sleeves. The whole button up is just ruined, and now it looks like it's covered up in period stains. However, I did get lucky enough to have enough fabric to make another button up. If this time anything goes wrong, I'm actually going to cry. Hopefully, I don't end up looking like this by the end of this project. These were my inspo for the cherry blossoms. I wanted something really soft and feminine, so to make the petals, I mixed some white and red together to create a soft pink for the base of the flowers. I mixed a little more red into the same pink that I made earlier to make a darker shade for the center of the flower. Honestly, this tiny step made a big difference. It gave the flowers so much more interest. Okay, I'm done painting all of the flowers and it's looking cute, but I made not just one mistake, but two mistakes. There is one stain at the shoulders and one stain at the back. Guys, painting with fabric paint is not easy. Once you make one tiny small mistake, that's it, it's game over. If you look closely at the inspiration photos, you will notice a few tiny green leaves hiding in between the flowers. They're easy to miss, but adding them made everything feel so much more complete. The little details really do make the biggest difference. At this point, we were getting so close to the finish line. All that was left was adding the brown paint for the branches, the flower centers, and the little bird. I don't know whether I should be happy or sad. Happy because I'm done and the painting is looking so good. I mean, the bird is so cute. The flowers is so cute. The tree is so cute. Everything is so cute. But sad because I have three stains that I cannot get rid of. One at the back, one at the shoulder seam, and one at the sleeves. But I'm not gonna give up. I'm gonna keep going with the scalloped edge and then lastly add the buttons. Once all the painting was finished, it was finally time for the most satisfying part, removing all the heat erasable ink. Seriously, it felt like magic. Now that the painting is finally finished, it was time to tackle the scalloped hem. Since I'd never made a scalloped edge before, I had absolutely no idea how big I wanted the curves to be, so I started looking around my room for random circular objects. Somehow, my final two options were a spool of thread and a toilet paper roll. Turns out I liked the look of the toilet paper much better than the spool of thread, so that's the one I went for. I really didn't want to ruin the shirt, so I tested everything on the shirt that already had stains on it first. After watching a few tutorials, I learned that all you have to do is use the shortest stitch length with a really narrow zigzag stitch. So I tested it on a scrap fabric first and it looked perfectly fine. Then I tried it on the actual scalloped edge that has many curves and it looked like this. I tried everything. I changed the stitch length, adjusted the settings, and gave it more attempts. But it still looked wonky. I was honestly so close to giving up on the scalloped edge until I had an idea. First, I stitched a really narrow zigzag stitch right along the line. Then I trimmed as close to the stitches as I could. It still looked very questionable, but here's the trick. I painted directly over the zigzag stitches, smoothing out all those uneven little bumps. And it worked! The zigzag stitch keeps the fabric from fraying and the paint hides all the imperfections. It honestly ended up looking so much cleaner than I ever expected. So I painted all the way around the hem, and just like that, the scalloped edge was finished! It's so cute! But these two stains, the stain on the back and on the sleeves, are so annoying. I'm trying to think of ideas on how to cover them up. For this one, I thought about painting another bird here so it would blend in with the painting. But over here, there's no other painting. There's just like a stain. Actually, I have one more thing to do. I'm gonna make a matching scrunchie with my free sewing pattern, and then it's gonna be time for the reveal. I know you want to see the reveal, but wait, there's just a few finishing touches left. First, the buttons. Unfortunately, my sewing machine buttonhole settings has officially decided it doesn't want to work anymore, so I had no choice but to use these plastic snap buttons instead. I just eyeballed where I wanted them to go. Then it was time to cover the stain on the back. I painted two tiny birds over it so the big bird could have some friends. And finally, I extended the bottom of the branch so it looked like the tree was growing straight out of the scalloped hem. Okay, it's time for the reveal! There is so many ways I can wear this shirt. I could wear it closed. I can wear it open. I can wear it all the way open. I could wear it slightly buttoned up or all the way buttoned up. Whew, I'm out of breath. There is so many ways I can style this shirt, and that's another reason why I love it.